Hello. Welcome to the Learning Council podcast. Actually, videocast. We're going to videocast this one. So we're going to do both, unless we share screen, and then we have to be very descriptive about what's on the screen, because if you're just listening, you're not going to be able to hear it. So I'm with today my good friend, Serena Saks-Mandel, who's the current CTO at Microsoft for global education. Right, Serena?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to talk about a lot of different things. We are going to touch on AI. Our theme today is AI and the futures of education. But first, I kind of want to introduce you a little bit more. So you've had a history in school districts, and now you're over here at Microsoft. So can you just give me a little bit of color about you? And then I want to mention your book that just came out and all that good stuff.
Sure. So short career history is that I have about 25 years in commercial IT. So IBM, Walt Disney World, a number of companies. And then I found my purpose of using my powers for good, my organizational leadership and technology skills. And I was lit up about 15 years ago about leveraging technology to personalize education for students. And that has driven me for the last 15 years. So I was at CIO Florida Virtual with Julie Young, my good friend, and then pivoted to Fulton County Schools. So I wanted to implement and develop and implement a model for personalization at scale in a brick and mortar for public school districts. And that's what we did. We had an amazing team, and we put in personalization of all its form: digital content, curriculum, assessment, data analytics, security, of course, and of course, devices and mobile device management. Turned around failing students in schools, hit all of the records for graduation, test scores, advanced reading and math levels. So many positives, including culture, across every demographic. It's a very, very diverse district across every demographic: minorities, students with disabilities, everything. So huge win. We were the first district to pivot to remote during the pandemic. And then I was like, I felt the calling to help the whole country, education in the US. And I did that for 20 months. And then now I'm global for the last 20 plus months.
Wow. So it just keeps notching up for you. Yeah. Nothing like self-challenge there, Serena.
Well, I haven't climbed the ladder for my good. It's because I want to make a bigger difference. I want to help more students and educators. I see the calling. So it isn't about, like, I didn't get more money if I go into edu to global. I just felt this, I need to help countries, not just, DOEs and school districts. So it's about elevating the level of care and support I can provide.
It's so awesome. Well, we could go into great detail on all that, because I'm sure there's a lot of schools and districts who are going to watch this that really want to know the details of how you did all that. But let's talk about first what happened with you just recently. I want to introduce your book. So tell me a little bit about it, because I can see it's sort of shadowed in the background on you. So tell me a little bit about it.
So first, I want to have a disclaimer. So when I talk about the book, and the book that I wrote is not Microsoft, it's me personal. It's a personal story, and it's a personal message to the reader. So I don't want to be representing Microsoft when I talk about the book. So
Okay.
With that, yes, I spent a little over a year writing. The writing isn't the hard part; it's the editing, and I had a lot of help with the editing. So lots of contributions on the editing side. And it's really meant to inspire and empower the reader. So current emerging leaders, I happen to be a woman in tech, I happen to be in ed tech, but it goes way beyond that. And I find when I talk about it, like we were talking earlier, people, it resonates, like the stories and the outcomes, and people do become inspired by it. And that's my sole purpose, is to inspire and help engage the next generation of learners and the current generation, because even today, no matter what your stage or age, we have daily challenges, we have lifetime challenges, we all have things we're overcoming, including me. And it's just to give us that oomph to keep going, persevere, and reach our goals.
I love it. Well, I think it's a perfect setup for us to turn the conversation into AI, because one of the things that I've been talking about a lot on the road as I'm meeting with schools and districts is the fact that, AI is really interesting and sort of sexy right now. It's like everyone wants
Yes.
to talk about that. And there's like 9 million, conference sessions on it in any big session, any big conference that you go to. And I want to frame that a little bit more, but I also want to say, I've been saying the balance to being more human is also rising, right? Like, so here we have all this tech that's come in, like for the last 50 years, it's been coming in and coming in and coming in. And I don't feel like the humanities really had a commensurate increase. And so when I talk to school districts, I say to them, listen, let's talk about what you're doing to be more human, not only as a body politic of administration, but how are you introducing being human and what you are as a human on this other side. And I don't want to get into almost like a religious spiritual
No.
thing, but it almost has to be, right? It's right on the edge, because if we don't do that, what's happening right now, especially with the current generation, is like a complete, they're coming in and they're used to just being on their phones all day, every day. And they're like, what, why are words coming out of your human mouth? Like, why don't you just text me? Right. So the ability to be human with another human is even worse, than maybe when we were young. Like, we were little barbarians, but at least we would listen to you a little bit. Right. So,
Right.
so what's your comment on that? Because I think there is a dovetail between what you're doing with your book, and then also now what's happening in this world with AI. It's like, why?
Yes. Yes. And you and I, as always, are on the same page. So I wanted to jump in and talk a lot, but I don't want to interrupt the podcast. But yes, I believe that AI demands that we have more human skills, that our humanness is what sets us apart from AI. If AI can do all this compute, can come back with all these answers and all this information, what about us? Well, it's our humanness that sets us apart. It's our ability to communicate like this and not just, use a phone. So everybody can use the technology and everybody will be able to, but not everybody can express themselves. Not everybody can write a book, because
Yeah.
I don't care. There are AI tools to do that. It doesn't capture real life stories unless you actually write them down. And I believe, and I think you and I have talked about this, that the classroom time is sacred. The human connection is sacred, right? Between teachers, educators, and students. And we need to leverage that time for the humanity to bring out the best in each student. And that, the theory of multiple intelligences. I truly believe that there are so many intelligences that we don't want to label them. We want each student to shine as a unique individual with their gifts and talents. And that requires an educator to inspire them and very much like my book, bring out the best and help them each frame their story and empower them, own their power. So yes, there is a lot of overlap. But I too believe we're kind of at this golden age of leveraging technology and AI to personalize education and reach each student where they are. But that requires even more human skills than we've been doing in the past. Anybody who knows a kid in middle or high school knows that they're like in their phone more than they are face to face in their communication. And we need to help them be able to express themselves, critically think, evaluate, synthesize, do all these things, put them together from using AI, and then make a difference in whatever it is, their educational world, their professional world. So I just agree. There's so much we need to do on the humanities side.
Yeah, so let's just say that's takeaway number one for everybody listening or watching right now, is like, number one, as we talk about the future of AI in schools, number one is it's going to force you to inspect and become more human, right?
Yes.
You're gonna have to figure out elements of your own humanity and how students can be more human, as part of this whole rise of AI. And I almost called some of my friends at T-Mobile the other day. I know some of the executive officers over there, and said, I don't know if you know this, but people aren't using the phone for phone. Like, people don't call people, right? Especially this newest generation. So I don't know if you know that, but like phone and why,
Yeah.
and there's this whole thing, right? So anyway, I could go on and on
But
about that. So let's just
I
say
want
that's
to, can I give an example for number one though?
yeah.
So Specifically, if you talk about assessments, if you ask a student to write a paper, they can use AI. So assessments need to not look for evidence of cheating, but evidence of learning. So if we use more personal, more human interaction for that assessment and ask the student to present and have the teacher and the class ask questions and go deeper, then we will know that the student really understands that material. So that's what we mean by human interaction versus just letting AI do the work. Does that make sense?
Yes, I totally get it. So, okay, so let's name that as number two. Like if you're
Okay.
like when we're looking
Assessment.
at the future of AI, we're looking at skill against AI, right? So what is that's sort of part of number one, but it's edging up into number two, which is what we're going to talk about with AI. But being able to actually teach the skills that make you relevant as a human
Right.
against the AI. Okay, so that's number two. So then I don't want to even get there yet, but I want to just go back and say probably number five is going to, like, we're going to go 3 and 4. Probably number 5 is going to be back circling to what you talked about with types of IQs.
Oh,
Because
yeah. Types of
because
intelligence.
we're stuck sort of right now, and I talk to educators a lot about this. We're stuck in this 1811 sort of paradigm of math, language, social studies, and history, the core, right? Or social studies and science, the core. And those are the big four. And we've been in these rails forever. Not that they're not important, but now I'm actually hearing leaders talking about, like, why don't we just throw out all the subject and start over again, and like actually do sort of like a bake off, like what subjects do we really need right now, because we're stuck in this ancient pattern and it seems sort of silly. So I think that's going to be coming out of this recognition of IQ. Like,
Yes.
there's different people with IQ. I definitely know I've seen people with a way higher IQ of physicality than me.
Yes.
And some of them play in the Super Bowl, right?
Right.
So they're
Right.
way better at that. And that's an IQ that I literally don't have. I can dance. But do not ask me to do any sort of level of physicality like those guys, because it's not going to happen. So what's your comment on that?
So two things. One is there are progressive schools now doing thematic education. So for example, farming. You can learn math, science, reading, English, all analysis. You can learn all these human skills if you look at farming. How much do you order? What do you use? There's machines also that in farming. You would be learning technology. So in fashion, if somebody's interested in fashion, you can apply all of these skills to a theme base, and there are schools that are doing that. But the other thing I would say is, and I'll use a personal example, my oldest brother is absolutely brilliant. When he was 11 years old, he bought a used VW Bug, an old one, took it apart and put it back together, an engine. Like, I couldn't do that.
No.
And he went on to do all kinds of things, very physical, mechanical. He was basically thrown out of school because he didn't fit the mold. And I believe he's absolutely brilliant. He has become a master at anything he tries. Master fisherman, he's great at law, he's great at real estate, he's great at art, all these different things. When I say art, buying and selling and being an expert on who the artist is and why this is important, whatever he applies himself to, he's very, very detailed. But as a child, he had so much energy. He was, head of the wrestling team, and he was good at wrestling. So, that multiple intelligences, we have to, school failed him. He didn't fail school. And we need to make education open for all, neurodiversities, for all kinds of learners. And, I think that's just a big statement. Education has to be a good fit for everyone.
Yeah, and I want to get into that next. So let's say number 3, because we already skipped ahead to number 5, which is there's going to be a change in subject. So number 3 is, like, let's talk about the types of AI, right? So you're at Microsoft. Actually, there's several AIs that you guys do.
Very many.
Yeah,
machine learning, vision, all kinds. Yeah.
So let's talk about those. So there's generative, right, which is the big one on the scene.
So the difference between generative and let me just explain generative, and the big difference that exploded, a little over a year ago, is that it's creating something new. That's what's different. So Machine learning, we used for many years before very effectively. That's what I used at the district to turn around failing students in schools. But that was looking at existing data, looking at assessment data, looking at content, and putting them together so that each student had what they needed. That was already capable. There's machine learning and now the generative is summarizing, it's drafting, it's creating visuals, it's creating movies, voices, all of these things. So that's the difference between those two.
But then there's also recommendations engine. Do you feel that that's part of machine learning?
So you can, I designed a recommendation engine with ML before generative came out. Generative can be applied to that, but machine learning, we did that already. We can look at the assessment data, we can look at the standards and the content aligned to the standards, and we say, okay, this student has a gap here, let's give them this content. That's just machine learning. So you're not creating something new when you do that. We do have tools that are creating new. So for like reading progress, it's helping students develop fluency, and then it reuses the words that they struggled with in a new paragraph that is generative. And so it can help them. And we're coming out, we may have already announced this, but it's a tool where a student kind of chooses their character, their setting, and writes a story based on the student's desire and image.
Yeah, that's super cool. I know it's getting a few schools in trouble right now, the consumer level stuff, because kids are doing weird things with images, moving the head onto something else and images out. Everybody's getting in trouble. So there's a whole morality there and the social etiquette, the same with almost everything else in life. But, it's an interesting moment for schools to get involved in. Okay, so those are a couple we talked about. I also want to mention there's another AI, which is there's three other ones I want to mention. IoT, Internet of Things, is embedded in machines and allows your refrigerator to talk back to you, and all kinds of things. And that was really interesting. Cisco talks about this one a lot, right? Because they watch all that, and it's a very interesting dynamic. And I think it's going to come to schools soon. In fact, I've seen people that are really interested in being able to just talk to their projectors. I don't want to hit any buttons. I just want to tell it things, right? So
make it a lot easier, right?
Yeah, and then that dovetails into voice AI, right?
Yes.
So, but I always find that the most dangerous part of voice AI is not being able to talk to something to make it do something I want, like interact with generative and get back an essay that I got to turn into my teacher tomorrow. I think the scary part of voice AI is actually that our machines are listening to us all the time. And maybe using machine learning off the data that they're learning from us. So that's where a new dovetail is coming in. What are your comments on that?
So first of all, I love IoT, and that has been around for a long time, way before generative, and that helps us like manage the physical environment of a school district. We used IoT to alert us when heating or air cooling wasn't working well. So IoT is very good for that. There's voice and there's vision. So you can use computer vision or AI vision to look at something and tell you what it is. So people who are hearing sight impaired, and it can be used somewhat in diagnoses, but I would be a little careful with that. I'm not sure it's totally mature yet.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't know about that. Okay, and then the last one, and you've heard me talk about this before, is the spatial temporal AI, which is a little bit like machine learning, but not quite. In application and education, it's basically going to bring a disruption to what is the live teaching moment as separate from the asynchronous, I'm studying something on my own moment, and be able to set auto cohorting of students on their own individual paths so that you still would intersect with live teaching, but it would be based on your own progress. And this is kind of a wild concept for people to wrap their wits around, because they can only see in their mind the manufacturing line of 250 years ago. They can't imagine individual students sort of like on an Uber ride where the Uber is picking up several kids at the same time, suddenly appearing on the calendar, so to speak, and then the classroom, and then comes back to their homeroom, or maybe remote, they're coming in via Teams or whatever. But this is the kind of wild pattern that could be created, which is a lot like Uber. It's a lot like sitting around in an airport, and all of a sudden some of them go off and fly over there, and then other ones fly over here, and other ones are coming back in. That's kind of a wild pattern for people to even to think about. But as an AI, it's going to be perhaps almost as disruptive as generative. What are your thoughts on that?
I think, first of all, you're the expert on this, and I love what you're doing with that AI, and I am so in favor of it. I feel that it's taking the whole idea of personalization and putting it on, for lack of a better analogy, steroids. And I hate steroids, but it's like, it's boosting it. It's saying, we're not just assigning you some content, we're giving you time, right? An educator's time and focus to help you master this, in addition to the content and a curriculum and workbook or whatever you're working on. And so it's giving the students what they need, when they need it, how they need it, with the additional help of the educator, just in time and just enough time in the right place. So, when I was at the school district, we used to envision the school of the future and how flexible it was. And we said, are we even going to need schools? I'm like, we agreed. We absolutely will need a place for students to come. The socialization is critically important. But the method, like you're saying, this factory method of, well, you're in this class for this long and this one, not everybody needs that much time in this one, and they may need more time in the other one. And you're breaking those barriers of the classroom and the seat time. And that is the best thing. Personalization breaks those barriers of time and place and molds it for the students' needs so that they can thrive.
So let's say this is number 4, the convergence of the AI. Okay, which is then going to lead to number 5, which is like, we're going to start inspecting topics and subjects and how we value IQ. But number 4 is really that convergence and disruption, because if you actually take in your mind generative, machine learning, voice, visual, recommendations engine, spatial, temporal, and IoT, and you sort of cram them all together. I mean, this is kind of hard to visualize, but I want people to do it, and you and I to do it, because when you bring all this stuff together, you see education is just literally not going to look the same at all. Because it will change how it uses space, it will change how it uses time, it will change how humans intersect with each other, and it'll change all of the materials, and how quickly you can access materials for the right person at the right time, and how they can be creative and generative, right? Like, so this kid has, like your brother, he has certain unbelievable abilities. Let's do a wrap around him and totally make this a completely unique journey.
Yeah.
This is like off the charts different in terms of like what people are thinking with. Yeah.
So let me ask you something about that. So I love that. I love breaking the mold. I love creating something that each student can benefit from. The challenge, and I want to put that back on you because you've been in this space. How likely, or how do we change this very hardened model across not only the US, I see it across the globe, that is just so machine factory oriented, and break it into what this new model is? That ever going to happen? Is it going to take 10, 15 years? Is it only going to be certain schools that adopt this?
Well, here's my answer to that. I think it's an inevitable thing, and because there's two levels of answer. Like, one is, how do we do it because they're so inculcated and patterned, and people don't want to, and there's laws about seat time, and there's laws about instructional minutes, and there's unfamiliarity, and humans are creatures. So this level 1 is just like, it's like encrusted in its own self, right? But level 2 is pain. So there's so much pain in schools and districts right now. It's almost like a gift that AI is coming into this space right now in order to give it an ability to change structure. Right? On every level. From all the AIs that we just talked about, on every level, without really sacrificing stuff. So the challenge is, this is the only challenge we have, is for people to understand, as management in schools and districts, understand what it could be, and then start taking their baby steps and defending them, so that the legislation and the other encumbrances that prohibit from actually achieving what they've always wanted to achieve can get out of the way, right? Because until you start proving it, the people in the legislature who barely can log into anything anyway, right? Like, so they don't understand technology. And they're like, but when I went to school, we had to walk up both hills, both ways, the
Right.
snow, you
Uphill
know.
both ways
I'm
in
sorry.
no shoes. Yes. In the snow.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just stop talking. I'm in charge now. So, you know, those guys, right? Those are the ones I
But,
want to say
but
that
what
to.
about
Don't
the
make me.
teachers? How do teachers feel about this? And you've got
I
unions
think it's
in many
all in,
states.
I think it's all in how you present it to them,
Hmm.
right? Like, listen,
Yeah.
you know, you're overworked. Like,
Yeah.
let's take you out of the classroom. You're gonna have your own office, and then when stuff pops up on your calendar, you go there and it's a much train, deliver the verbal instruction, call everybody, make sure they know what they're supposed to be doing. And mini quizzes, whatever you want to do. We're not changing method, right? We're
Yeah.
just changing how time is used, and then kick them back out. You don't need to watch over them when they're doing their worksheets or they're reading or they're
Right.
logging into a module. Why are you doing that? Let's save your time and make you the rock star that you are, right? Like, it's
Right.
all how you communicate to them. Like, listen, you're still getting to teach. It's just you're not going to have them for a full 45 minutes. Like, why are you doing that? Like, let's
Right.
just change that up, because then if we change that up, then we have the opportunity to do, cohort 1 at 9 a.m. and cohort 2 at 1 p.m., right?
Hmm.
Because then they're all moving at their own pace, or like cohort 1 today and cohort 2 2 days from now, or a month. Like, it doesn't
Right.
matter. And not only that, but you could enter your day and you're teaching, you got 2 grades, 6th and 7th grade. You're teaching one lesson that's lesson 6 to this group of kids today,
Yeah.
and lesson 7 in a different group this day. But it's like it's patterned out. So you enter your day just like the rest of us in corporate America enter it as a teacher. You'd not like this, and you don't know what you're gonna be doing, right? Like, you look at your calendar, you're like, holy cow, I'm teaching lesson 5, 10, and 55 of course 1 in one day, right?
Yeah.
And what's wrong with that? Because it's just shorter little sessions where you're actually human, doing
Right.
human stuff, and then
Right.
everybody goes
Getting
back to
ready.
what. Yeah.
Let me
So
ask you
that's
one more. Let me ask you a leading question. The
yeah.
biggest problem I'm reading about is student absenteeism. Do you think this will help the students come back
Yes,
to school?
because what happens with absenteeism is they don't think school is relevant to them. There's two type of kids that are the most pronounced in that. One, the ones that are way behind, and two, the ones that are way ahead. Everybody's in the middle is like, oh, whatever, right? We cannot justify whole group learning anymore.
Right. I'm so with you. I wanted to hear your answer. I totally
Yeah,
agree.
whole group learning has gone the way of the dodo, I think 25 years ago, right?
I
Like,
agree.
and we just keep pushing it and pushing it. And we think we're doing it because it's the industrial age efficiency model. But we're living in a tech age, and it's not a model that works
It
for
doesn't.
anyone. It's just got friction with culture, friction with like the equity thing, that everything. But I mean, in every direction. And now people, since the pandemic, is like, I think it's optional. I
And
don't
the
care if you
students are
got a
voting.
law,
They're
you
voting with
know.
their feet.
Yeah, they're voting with their feet. They're like, I'm out, I'm out.
I'm out.
So also, when you take all these forms of AI, the future of AI, take it out of the realm of just physicality. Now you pull it up to the realm of, if you can't get it, let's say you're not in Fulton, you weren't in Fulton, you were in like one of the rural districts that was sister to you over in Georgia. They can't get a science teacher out there in the middle of nowhere for whatever reason. So then you share them one, and you get their French teacher, which they happen to have out there, and you share across. Now we've got like a network matrix model of sharing that could go
Right.
global,
Right.
right?
Right. Because it doesn't matter where
Because
you are to deliver the content.
yeah, because you can still use virtual conference platforms, and then still have physical teachers in the room. So suddenly AI, this is the other thing AI is going to do. It's going to collapse the world of online with physical.
Yes.
So there is no separation between was the online world and the physical world, because you can be or both, or just one or the other, right? Like,
Right. Right.
so it's yeah, so we're living in a
Multimodal.
really, yeah, it's multimodal. So I think it's a very interesting time, but I haven't let you talk enough about what you really think is the future because of AI. So you go.
Oh, I am just enjoying what you're saying. I just feel like yes, 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 amen, right? I mean, I think, Michael Horn, class disrupted. I mean, we need to disrupt class. It is so overdue. I totally agree that this, cohort model with teacher lecturing to all the, I mean, think about it. A teacher lecturing every year the same lesson across the globe. So on any given day, how many times is somebody presenting the quadratic equation? How many times is somebody presenting, the French Revolution? And I'm sure that there's a bell curve of presenting that. People are naturally better at some things than others. It's not a knock on anyone. It's just human nature. Why not take the best lecturer for each of these subjects and have them be the master teacher? Students can get that content, in your model, remotely, online, in person, whatever. But that's just one form of education. And I go back to, we need those educators to be the inspiration, the human, and help the students develop their human skills and their gifts and talents. So that requires a humanness. Master teachers need to be delivering, whether it's recorded or live, the content that the students need. Content is still super important, but the human aspects, the more we get technical, the more we have to be human. It's a balance.
And I think it's a major thing to bring up to all the leaders out there, including teachers.
Yeah.
Like, you're leading a classroom and like, how to be human. That's your greatest skill. How well is that being leveraged?
Right.
So, okay, so let's just go back one more time to what are all the barriers. Go ahead.
Leilani, I want to add one more thing, that we've had a last several years of teacher shortages. And I also believe that in addition to addressing the student absenteeism, this whole model can address the teacher shortage, because you're asking teachers to be human, not, Chinese experts, not French Revolution experts. You're asking them to be experts in inspiring students, in giving a love of learning. I mean, our most important thing we can pass on to students is lifelong learning and curiosity, right? That's the most important thing, so that they continue to learn, because it's never done, right? And I think that this could help address the teacher shortage as well. I think more teachers would be attracted to this model than they are today.
I hope so. I sure people understand it. And that's, like I said before, the number is too many people in education have the vision for what it looks like. They don't understand where it's going as it all comes together. And they're not going to be ready for it. And they're going to get run over and sidelined by everybody that's coming in from the choice legislation movement, with every form of charter and private school known to mankind, and all types of consumer online. So you and I are at right now, and this is maybe our final message for this video cast, is that we want you to sort of like get on board as people in education, or if you're listening to this right now and you're a consumer of education, get excited, get in there, and tell people, like, did you know what's happening? Like, do you understand where this stuff is going? Because you better find out. You better start doing it. Whatever baby step you can take, so you can defend that and then take the next step. This is a key thing.
Yeah, and so the question is what to do to get ready. And I would point both educators and learners and even administrators to the AI learning tools. There are free AI learning tools, and I work for Microsoft, so I'll just say we have AI courses for educators and for students. There are lots of others out there, and they are free. Get educated on all the forms of AI. One thing we didn't talk about was like OpenAI and Azure, where you can ground your chat, ground your AI in the content and curriculum of your district, so that it doesn't go out to the web and give false information. It only returns information that's in your standards. So there's so many ways of leveraging AI. I can give you lots of school districts that are already doing this, and higher ed. So get educated on AI. And then what? I want you to talk about, and I know we're turning this around a little, but I want you to talk about like the model that you're talking about, spatial temporal. What can people do to start understanding that?
Well, right now, Hybrid Logistics Project is on the Learning Council site. The step one. And at the bottom of that page are a whole bunch of resources of articles that I've written and, a whole special report that's out about it. There's a whole lot of people that have sort of put their minds to this. How's this going to work? Who's going to do it? Blah, blah, blah. I don't get it. I mean, I'll probably do another video cast just to show and tell how it works. In the system, but really how it really starts working is when people start to say to themselves, hey, yes, let's break the manufacturing line. The number one inequity we have, and people talk about systemic all the time, is the structure that says to you, you're 8 years old, you got to be with all the other 8-year-olds. I don't care about anything else, right? Like, I'm sure you're a 10th grader right now, and you're in language, and you finished all the Harry Potter books by the time you're 4, but you got to stick with your group, right? Why? Why do you got to do that? I don't want to do that.
Why?
And
right.
Talk about why absenteeism is. Because people come there and they have everything else in their whole life customized, and people can show up on their front door with all their packages, and they get to school and they're like, I'm just a number. I'm like in a group, and like nobody really notices me individually. I'm like, I'm out, right?
Right.
So yeah, I think it's a big deal, but I really have to tell you, you've been in a place where you got a lot of rules. You're stuck inside this thing, and as an educator and administrator, you're like, man, maybe I should just retire because there's too much hitting me right now. I got so many rules this way and that way, and how do I play? I'm telling you, you can still make a really big change in your time and space structure without running over any of the rules. But you've been there, so you know how it was.
Yeah, I love that. I love what you're doing, and I want to work with you on it. I think it's amazing, and I look forward to feedback from this presentation, questions, input, ideas, thoughts, right? I think this will be amazing.
Yeah, people should write in on our contact us form. There'll be a quiz on the 5 that we mentioned, and you have to mention them in order, even though we didn't mention them in order. There's 5 of them. Right. So anyway, so this has been super fun. So thank you so much. I think you are an amazing person, inspiring emotionally as well as professionally and intellectually. So you hit all 3 bases there on that one, Serena. So thank you. Thank you for being with me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I would love to continue our collaboration.
Yeah, thank you. All right, this is your host, Leilani Coffin. Thanks for being with us. Keep listening, keep learning.